Hello, everyone. We now have a presentation from Engineer Satyajit Roy, Director, EEC Trading at Elegant Exit Company. He currently leads the initiative of converting old ships into green steel globally for the Elegant Exit Company. Prior to EEC, he had a startup facility for maintenance and repair of offshore marine vessels as its COO and a director of product development for AI software development. Roy has a degree in electrical engineering and economics from Pennsylvania State University, USA. Over to Satyajit Roy.
Hey everyone, I hope everyone's having a wonderful afternoon today. To start my presentation, my first slide is a picture which I really admire a lot for some reason. And my entire reasoning to it is that the Arab world or the Middle East, known to the desert lands, were always explored on camels. And on these exploration seminars years ago, they found oil, or what was called as black gold back then. It was a game-changing thing a few decades ago at this point. Today, I call myself a similar camel rider who walks on those desert sands and I look for new opportunities. And one thing which came up recently in my mind in the last 2-3 years was, how do I reduce carbon emissions from steel mills? And the perfect answer to that was ships to green steel. And this is a wonderful opportunity for the Middle Eastern countries to get onto it. To start off with, the problem statement. 7% of carbon emissions across the world is by steel emissions. Steel production cannot be stopped around the world because that's a major requirement for every economy to grow forward. If you look at this way right now, wherever you're sitting, around you, almost anything you touch or see will be made of some kind of steel or the other. Hence, that's a major concern that you cannot stop them. Currently, there's a 1.3 to 1.8 tons of CO2 emitted for producing 1 ton of steel, which is a conventional method right now. So what do we come and say? Can ship recycling fix this problem? A brief introduction about me, which is given by this thing, so I will not go much into that thing. But yeah, just to give you a bit about myself, I was born in India. I grew up in different parts of the world, to Kuwait, to USA, Malaysia, Singapore, and then moved back to Middle East again to start this venture. I have a degree in electrical engineering and economics from Pennsylvania State. I'm also Six Sigma Black Belt for data and process efficiency. And in simplest words, what I call myself is that I'm born in a family of lawyers and ship captains. My mother, my uncle, my grandfather, they were all lawyers and some were even judges. Whereas my entire other side of the family, my father, cousin brothers, brother-in-law, they're all ship captains. So I decided to shock my entire family and become an electrical engineer. So this was my basic background in what I did. Today, we'll just go through a simple, just to give you a brief idea of what I'm going to go through is, one is ship recycling current scenario, statistics, laws governing these things, legislations basically, and the game-changing one which is coming recently for the last this year in January, and the carbon emission of steel mills, green production, and the most important thing, what you would like to know is what are we doing regarding emission controls and what we as EC are doing in this region, be it Oman, Bahrain, and UAE. So just to give an idea, this is a ship which my family and I, we really adore and love a lot. Unfortunately, like anything in the world, this also has a timeline or time limit or its life. 25 years or later, these ships have to go to the recycling yards to be scrapped. Now, when you scrap a ship, 95% of it is steel. And that's where I come back and saying that a ship is nothing when it's about 15 years, 16 years old. It's a floating pile of scrap, which has a predefined weight and an amount and price. So this is a wonderful opportunity for steel mills to secure its supply chain of scrap. Green recycling and the other side of it, why Middle East became a big focus for me was because green and sustainable recycling is a major requirement for all ship owners across the world right now. Why? This is the reason to it. Current scenarios of ship recycling is happening only in the Indian subcontinent of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Now, the safety conditions of the workers over there is not really ideal. I'm not here to condemn beaching or anything over there as such. What I'm saying is that things can improve a lot. I've spent the last few months, actually, to be honest with you, I've gone to the yards in India and all, and I've always observed that all of them would like to have some kind of improvements in their work lives over there. In fact, I can quote one of the yard owners over there who said that, who wouldn't like to have a better workplace? But there are different laws which govern them, which cannot be bypassed. This vessel is something which I have sailed on as a baby a long time back. I have seen this ship being beached over there. Now, this scenario of beaching these vessels is not exactly acceptable by NGOs, investors, politicians, and banks in general. Why they say that is because when you're breaking a ship on the beach, sometimes or the other, even no matter how much you're careful with, a lot of particles do fall in the water, which goes back into the intertidal zone, which is dangerous for human health as well as for maritime health over there. Basic idea of what's happening in the beaches is that a high risk of accidents and health damage to our workers' health, emissions on sea and water, on water and air, and there's lack of downstream waste management. In fact, point number three is the main reason why my focus moved to Middle East. Middle East is one of the best waste management protocols in the world at this point. In fact, I can give you a big idea of Bahrain. Bahrain is very strict with its waste management, and we have a yard partnering with us in Bahrain, which has been certified for all the standards for ship recycling. And the key factor over there has always been waste management. In India and all, the waste management rules are there, but it's not enforced and followed properly. That's where you say lack of government support, you could say. Lack of transparency and other factors are major concerns for the beaches right now. This is an idea of how it looks like. It just comes to the beach and ships are broken piece by piece. As you can see, it's not an easy place to work over there. Now, that being said, like I said before, I do admire a lot of facilities in India which are working towards a better improvement. An example is this yard over here. They have actually gone way beyond their expectations to make it more upgraded to a more modern standards. For example, they have extended jetty factor, which can help them break the ships in a more convenient manner. Yet they are still behind towards having the highest standards possible. Beaching in general, to give you an idea, you can see the entire focus has been on India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. That's the three areas where 90% of the ships go to recycle. The remaining 5 to 8% actually goes to Turkey. And Turkey, being an OECD country, enjoys a lot of benefits for getting these ships at a lower price. To give an idea about what happens ship recycling in numbers, as you can see, the numbers were pretty encouraging in 2017-18, but then on it became a bit of a down run. 20 and 21 were actually very low because the yards were closed for for what's it called, COVID-19. And 22 onwards, ship recycling yards have opened up again. So the numbers are slowly increasing. We anticipate that in the next 5 to 6 years, one of the biggest companies in the world have to get rid of about 700 vessels of their own in the next 5 to 6 years. The yards in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh alone cannot satisfy the requirements in those scenarios. So this is a wonderful opportunity again coming back to Middle East where they can actually recycle ships in the highest standards possible, cleanest and healthiest manner possible. And this also guarantees and sort of secures the supply chain of scrap to the steel mills. Again, coming back to the numbers, this is the same numbers which has been given out there. As you can see, let's have a not good. This is actually in terms of tonnage. So you would see a breakdown of the percentage as such and what was happening. Now, legislations are very important, vital aspects of ship recycling. The number one thing which I always want to focus upon is the Basel Convention. The Basel Convention is nothing but just a transboundary movement of hazardous waste. So you'll have to always comply with Basel Convention, Basel ban whenever you're recycling a ship. Now, unfortunately, uh, a ship at the end of its life is declared as hazardous waste. So hence all the Basel Convention factors to come into play. So OECD countries cannot send their ships to non-OECD countries in general. So this is one aspect which we have to always look at as ship recyclers. The second one, I'll go to it after a bit. I'll go to the third one called Hong Kong Convention. This was done by the International Maritime Organization. This is a law which they passed for green and ethical ship recycling. Unfortunately, this has not come into effect yet because they didn't have any supporters or signings of it. During that time, the European Union said they could not wait for it. So they declared their own ship recycling regulations. So 2018 onwards, all the ships flying the European flag will have to be recycled in European approved shipyards. And these ships have to be broken on impermeable flooring. That means it cannot be going to the beaches for recycling. Now, there was a game changer which happened this year. The country UAE as a whole has declared that UAE flag vessels cannot go to the beaches. Now, this has encouraged us as such in general as EC to focus more on Middle East as we go about. Again, I'll just go through this last picture of beaching again. This scenario of workers going on to deep or muddy areas on the beaches to cut vessels is not acceptable by major ship owners across the world. That is one of the biggest concerns they have. A lot of accidents happens because of this. Now coming to the main agenda for me would be like steel mills. Steel mills require scrap for better ESG performance, without a doubt. And the biggest challenge which any mill owner has told me till date is that they want to go to scrap metal, but none of them can guarantee themselves that how much scrap can come into play. If you look at it this way, scrap is a commodity which has multiple traders, even in Bahrain or Oman and UAE as such in general. Not a single mill can guarantee that in a day they'll get say 10,000 tons of steel scrap coming in. So this is a big challenge for them throughout, and that's when I told them that a ship can solve your supply chain problem. Why? It's very simple. A ship has a defined weight, says 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, or 40,000 tons of steel. You can bring them to the yards and cut them in a systematic manner. And if we keep on managing the timeline over there, so I can ensure the supply chain of scrap to the mill is actually secured very properly. And this is something which they really uh, look out for in this current scenario. Bahrain, for example, the partnering steel mill in Bahrain has asked us to ensure 10,000 tons of scrap to be sort of given in the first month itself when we start operations over there. And as we go about, the number of tons will keep on increasing. Benefits of scrap usage compared to iron ore? Well, definitely a lot of carbon emissions are reduced. Okay, energy consumption is down by 60%, very straightforward over there, which is one of the biggest factors there. There is a massive reduction in CO2. As you can see, 86% of CO2 is actually reduced when you use scrap metal. One of the other factors which is also very important to note is that when you're using iron ore, just to obtain 200,000 tons of iron ore, you will need to extract almost a million tons of soil around it. That does cause a lot of concerns throughout. More importantly, most of these iron ores are coming in from Brazil or somewhere else, all the way to Oman and Bahrain, all these things. So carbon emissions for transportation also comes into play. So these numbers in general cannot be ignored by steel mills. Again, ESG is a major factor for everyone in the world today. To go more in depth, when you compare to steel produced from iron ore and steel from recycling, uh, these factors you can see very clearly in terms of iron ore production and everything. The most important thing would be the last line over here. If you observe, the power consumption is very low when you're using steel from recycling metal. Steel products, well, it can be slabs and billets in general, which are normally re-rolled to a finished product like plates, sheets, strips, and etc., which goes on like this. I want to focus on this for a second. As such, you can see is that when you use a normal method in here in Middle East right now, you have a furnace which will produce DRI. This DRI goes straight into the electric arc furnace, which will then produce billets, blooms, and slabs. These are then re-rolled into a final product. Okay, and this system has been very much enhanced Middle East heavily. For example, I've seen most of the mills in Middle East, they have a DRI plant next to this electric arc furnace. So what they do is they take the hot DRI straight into the electric arc furnace so that they can reduce the consumption of energy as well as reduce carbon emissions as such. What is interesting now is that I can take out the entire left portion of this presentation and reduce the entire inputs to just scrap from ship recycling. The effects are exactly the same. Now, ships also have a different aspect, which I want to sort of cover for a second or two, and that would be re-rolling plates. There's a massive misconception people have that plates from recycling is actually used for just making rebar alone. I went to a mill in India. They are partnering with us to open up a big facility in UAE right now. And what I learned over there was that these plates, which you see over here, is actually coming from recycled ships, basically. And these plates are very strong. A ship has to go through very severe, harsh weather conditions when it's sailing. And to survive it out, it has one of the highest quality of steel possible, which is malleable, tangible, and etc., which is very high. The word is high carbon tensile steel is used over there. What they do is they bring these plates into these CNC machines over there, and then they cut them into various parts. For example, the one you see over here, these are actually tractor plows. These are big, high demanded things in India and Pakistan right now as we speak. And to produce this final product of steel, carbon emission is actually very, very low. In fact, we are looking at other alternate energy to be used for cutting plates into a final product. Mills in Middle East, like I mentioned to you before, they have actually not seen a steady flow of scrap coming in. This has been a problem for a very long time for them, I would say. If you look at this way, observe scrap movements, UAE is one of the biggest exporters of scrap in the world, and the entire scrap goes to India or Pakistan. They don't consume it themselves. Although there is a big requirement for the local mills in UAE itself to consume close to about 250,000 tons of scrap a year. The other problem which they also face is that they have never had a steady flow of scrap metal in the region. Sometimes they'll come and say they are producing, say, 10,000 tons in a month. Sometimes it's 15, 20, 30. It just keeps on going up and down. So there's never a guaranteed flow. And that disrupts their supply chain. Hence, they have to depend on iron ore, which is currently more stable for them at this point. The mills have also redesigned their facility in such a way that they consume less energy as possible. Now, with these factors come into play, the reason they want to move to scrap is because carbon taxes come into play, and also the concept of lead steel. Now, lead steel is basically any kind of steel which is produced which has 25% or more scrap metal. This was the word which someone told me in one of the mills over there. And this is a major requirement for all the constructions in Middle East. In fact, one interesting story was that lead steel was required for making the new Bahrain airport, and the local mills could not provide it. So the entire steel came in from UAE instead. This is one of the examples where they missed out. So that's why people really want to look towards the idea of having scrap metal secured so that they can produce the best green steel possible. I do want to touch on one part over here right now is that India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, as you can see, the top three ones pay a big amount of money for buying these ships for scrapping. And ships have plates coming out of it for those regions. So that's why they pay very high value to it. You can see the numbers are north of $500 over there per ton for buying a ship. And then, of course, they cut it and they produce it to send to the mills for various production. Now, these are also very high quality steels. So the end products are also really, really good compared to what you get from your local markets today. Now, why I say Middle East has a wonderful opportunity is because Middle East has one of the best waste management rules possible in the world. Okay, with that, they can actually get ships at a much good price. You see, Turkey, for example, over here, because it's an OECD country with a very nice waste management regulations and rules, which is enforced by the government, they actually end up procuring the ships at half the price. This actually does help them in securing the supply chain to a lot of mills within Alia region in Turkey itself. Scrap wise, okay, this is something which I do find it very interesting is that scrap being a commodity can have massive disruptions throughout. In fact, this year itself, like from Jan till today, there was a massive disruption. If you observe properly over here, when the war started, scrap price went up like anything, and now it's being slowly stabilized. So this event in this year actually did affect a lot of steel consumption, scrap steel consumption for mills in this region as such, because it became too costly to procure them. In fact, DRI became much more cheaper for a while. This is Turkey prices over there. And in India, the prices have been going up to a good level to 600 north, but it's slowly being stabilizing around 480, $490 per ton. So we expect that to be more stable throughout the year. And that is something which the region is looking out for. Coming back to again the ship, why ships are very important in terms of steel production is that 95% of the ship is actually steel. If you take out corrosions and everything as such, you'll observe that immediately 90% would be renewable steel and smelting scrap, which is about 60 and 30% respectively. And there's also cast iron and other things which is also there. And barely about 1.5% of non-ferrous metal is also coming out from steel. Now, When I give these numbers to a steel mill, what they really like about it is that when we buy a ship to recycle them, they know exactly how much of steel is going to come out, say, at a particular period of time. Hence, I'm again securing the supply chain of scrap metal in the region. EC in general, what we do, to give an idea, okay, we have a fleet of vessels which we have acquired from blue chip owners who require to recycle the ships at the highest standards possible. We take them to our yards, some yards which we control ourselves, we own and operate them, or some which are partnering with us, for example, Bahrain. And then when the ship comes in, we tend to scrap and it's sent to the mills in either within our region itself, which we either own or we partner with them as such. Simplest way, each vessel comes to the recycling yard. The ship is converted into scrap. That scrap goes to the steel mills, and the steel mills then make it into green steel. This is the simplest flow which we have come up with. This is the UE model, and it's a very similar model in Bahrain also. In Bahrain, what we do is we have a partnering yard, which is breaking the ships for us under our supervision. The scrap is then consumed by the adjacent steel mill next door. Of course, carbon emissions can reduce to 60 to 70% by consuming the steel scrap over there. And this region, we estimate that over a period of time, this will have a capacity of 300,000 tons of scrap being produced annually. This yard is also the only yard in the region right now which is certified to all the standards of ship recycling. To give you a perspective on the picture wise of it, this is the yard in Bahrain, which will be receiving all the ships and turning into scrap. And the mill is right next door, which is going to consume the entire steel. This is like the best example of a circular economy which we have seen. Of course, in Oman also, we have something happening over there in central coast of Oman. We're building a yard over there, and a partnering major steel giant is actually opening a facility within the adjacent area of the yard, which will consume the entire steel. Now, we anticipate this one to be up and running within say, 2 to 3 years from now, and this will have a capacity of producing 300,000 to 500,000 tons of scrap metal annually, which can be consumed completely by the mill itself. In simplest words, we call this as meeting of the minds. Ship owners require a place to go for ethical recycling. So the mills, so the yards in Middle East are ideal to take over in the ships coming in. The steel mills in the Middle East require scrap to be secured in the supply chain. So hence, this is a meeting of the mind where both can be secured perfectly. So just give you an idea. So we have partnered with Asri and Sulb in Bahrain itself. That's what we're doing over there. We have a full-fledged company in Bahrain. We have a yard in Dammam, which we partnered with, and we're going to be talking to the steel very soon, which has consumption requirements are there. And we have partnered with the minor shipyard in Dubai. And probably the most important one for me right now is we are actually building a fully integrated facility in UAE right now, in which ships will come to the shipyards. The same facility will have a steel mill, which we are partnering with one of our partners that are coming in as a joint venture. And what we're looking at right now is we're trying to see the feasibility to see if we can use some different alternate energy to produce steel over there to reduce carbon emissions over there. So this is an idea what we're trying to do in this region as such as the smoke point. I think this is my last slide over there. And yeah, this is what I have.
Thank you so much, Satyajit, for your presentation. It's actually an eye-opener. We didn't know so much was happening in the background, with regard to ship recycling here. But I just have one question. Like you mentioned, there were a lot of opportunities because India and Pakistan, of course, it's all centered around India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, a majority of the ship recycling activities. So do you think there is scope also for many players entering the Middle East market in this area? And what do you think would be the challenges
Well,
as you,
the
yeah.
scope definitely is like all the mills require. Like I can give you the numbers right now. Is one of the biggest mills in the region, Emirates Steel, for example, requires about 300,000 tons of steel scrap per year. And this region has been very much encouraging to go to scrap steel. For example, UAE banned the scrap, trade of exporting of scrap steel last year for a period of say 3 to 4 months. Saudi banned it for 3 months last just a few months back. I went to Kuwait in February they banned it for 3 months. And the main objective over there was by banning the export of scrap steel from that country, there's no other option but just to go straight to the steel mills in that region itself to take it in. So the requirement and the hunger is definitely there. Now, coming back to the ship scrapping and all, blue chip owners, listing an example of names over there, BW Group, Maersk, Stena, all those fancy names that you see in the market over there, they require an ethical place for recycling. And when you say ethical means, let's be really honest in one part, Middle East has a good standard for waste management. I think you have one of the waste management partners from Bahrain who has been presenting over here. So you can ask him also more about that. He'll tell you more in depth how strong Middle East is in terms of waste management. So that is taken care of. Then secondly is the workers' health and safety. Every worker, whether it's an office worker or whether it's a natural person working in the shipyards, the health monitoring and everything is very strict in this region on a yearly basis, you could say. So we look after them very clearly in terms of health factors over there. And the most important thing, which is also required for the ship owners, is that the ships have to be recycled ethically. So there are accidents happening in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh because the government is not very strict in enforcing those regulations. The same does not apply to Middle East. They're very, very strict. In fact, I cannot move things out in Bahrain in general. I'll give you an example. In Bahrain, if I have to take out in 1 ton of steel out, I have a massive amount of paperwork I have to go through with it. And they do observe us for safety and health over there for the workers and waste management, of course. So that being those factors, yes, ship owners would like to have Middle East as an option. In fact, blue chip owners do talk to me regarding this thing. In fact, we will be having them coming to this region to look at the yards in Bahrain, Oman, and in UAE. Their biggest concern right now is Maersk alone, for example, requires to recycle 700 ships in the next few years.
Okay.
So the Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi yards cannot handle all of them together. So they require more capacity, and that's where Bahrain, Oman, and UAE can really push in and get that thing clarified. More importantly, the steel mills are actually willing to go the extra step to make this happen. So UAE has announced this no beaching policy, so that will be also encouraging for ship owners to look at UAE as an option for recycling. I know other two countries are also looking at recycling policies coming in, so it should be.
Great. Thank you so much. We are actually running out of time, and thanks for joining us here. Wish you good luck with your projects,
Thank you.
and thank you. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.